All right. So far, we have read up until chapter 9. Can anyone tell me what happened in chapters 8 and 9? We have a few people who were not in the group last week who may not know what happened. So can anyone tell me what happened in chapters 8 and 9? What did we read about last week? Anyone know?
Miss Julia's died.
Uh-huh. Miss Jackson.
I mean, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. Julia Jackson.
Julia Jackson. Absolutely. Julia Jackson died. Hold on. Why does it look like that? All right. Julia Jackson died. Can anyone tell me what was the family's reaction when they found Julia Jackson dead? Were they happy, sad?
They was happy.
They are happy.
They were very happy. This was their grandmother for some, or their mother for her children, and they were not sad at all. They were happy that she was alive. How would you feel if your grandmother or mother passed away?
I cry.
Yeah, I would too. Absolutely. So this family is very weird. They are not like your traditional family. And we also said that we know that some families have good days and some families have bad days. But this family in particular is very different. They were excited to find out that she was no longer alive. They were happy about it, okay? They were more concerned about what? Now that go ahead.
About money?
Yes, they wanted her money. They wanted to know what is going to happen with all of her money. Can anyone remember what did she leave to tell us what happens to her money? She left a what? What is it called? Anyone remember what it's called? It's called a will. It's a will. So what happens is when you are alive, you leave a list of instructions with an attorney or a lawyer about what you want to happen with maybe your home, your car, your jewelry, your possessions, your money. So people typically will write a will before they die saying who they want certain things that they belong, who they want those things to go to. So that is called a will. It is called a will. So she left a will, and in her will, she left specific instructions about who gets what money. Okay. She leaves specific instructions about who gets what that she had. Something interesting that the detective told, or the coroner on page 57, the coroner tells the family, the coroner and the doctor tell the family that they're going to have an autopsy. The word is autopsy. Let me see if I can find the page. An autopsy. Here we go. An autopsy. Okay. So that Nick and Victor, her son, Nick is her grandson, and Victor is her son, they are arguing or fighting with the doctor. Why is there going to be an autopsy? And an autopsy is when you have the morgue go into the body and they go inside to determine how the person died. Did she die naturally in her sleep? Did she die because she maybe had a heart attack? Did she die for some other reason? Okay. So this is something that typically happens. And in these types of situations, in order to determine what happened, an autopsy has to be done. But the family does not want them to investigate how she died. Why do you think they don't want her to investigate? Anyone have an idea? Why don't they're like, no, I don't want you to tell me how she died. She just died. That's it.
Maybe they kill it.
Maybe they killed her. Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing, that maybe they killed her. How many of you think that? Me. We all kind of have the same idea that maybe someone in her family may have killed her. So let's read from chapter 10 to determine what could have happened to Miss Jackson. And I will start, okay? Let me leave my glasses on. Okay. The following day, Tammy made a list of photographs. Maybe someone wanted them, but she doubted it. Nick joined her in the library. What will you do with the estate? An estate is another name for the house. Okay. So she is asking, Tammy is asking Nick, what are you going to do with the house? Because his grandmother left him the house. She says, will you sell it? No, I'm turning it into a small, exclusive hotel, as I always wanted to do. The bedrooms will be suites for hotel guests. The living room, library, dining room, and kitchen can be easily remodeled. There was excitement in Nick's voice, so he wants to change the house into a hotel. What about the gardens and the grounds? It's all arranged. Eva, her daughter-in-law, will design the grounds. She can't wait to get started. She wants a swimming pool and tennis courts. Ronnie and Troy will stay too. They will have a small staff to help them. Nick had clearly planned this out for years. So it wasn't like Grandma Jackson died and he's gonna take some time and decide what he wants to do. He already knows what he's going to do. So it sounds like Nick has been planning this for a long time. Tammy continued to be shocked at the Jackson family's behavior. No one seemed sad or sorry about Julia's death. No one discussed funeral arrangements. The family acted like prisoners who were freed. Had life here been that bad? Yes, Julia had not been a lovable person, but she had provided a home, employment, and financial support for 6 family members. Was no one grateful? So as a mother and a grandmother, she gave them a home they didn't have to pay for. They didn't have to pay for utilities or phone or, probably groceries either, because she probably paid for all of that. She even gave them a job, and she supported them without even being asked to do that. But the family is so selfish, meaning they only think about themselves. They have not even planned her funeral. That's very sad. Tammy broomed at the timing of Julia's death, only 2 days after her threat. What was Julia's threat? What was her threat to the family? Can anyone remember? What did not Tammy, excuse me. What did Julia tell her son she wanted to do before she died? She threatened them and told them she was going to do what? And they were all scared and worried. Can anyone remember? She said she was going to do something with the house and she was going to live somewhere else. Where was she going to live? No one remembers? Let's see.
No.
I'm looking for the page. I know what she said she was going to do. Okay. So on page 43, chapter 6 is the threat. So her and Victor are talking. She says, I'll do what I want, Victor. He says, Mother, please don't do this. She says, remember, Victor, the business and the estate, meaning the house, belong to me. No one can stop me if I want to sell them. If I want to go live in a hotel, I can. So Miss Jackson wanted to sell the family's business and she wanted to go live in a hotel. So that means if she sold the house, where would the family go live? If she sold the business, who would she work? Who would they work for? Because remember, they worked for her. Okay. Only 2 days after that dinner conversation, Tammy could not let go. Miss Nosy had to know more. So Tammy wants to know. 2 days after the family has this big fight, Miss Jackson ends up dead. Let's keep reading. That afternoon, Tammy visited Julia's bedroom. It looked like a hotel room, impersonal, clean. A window was open. Tammy poked her head out. Just below the windowsill, Eva's favorite June roses were in bloom, their red colors glowing in the afternoon sun. Their scent filled the air, outside and inside. Now, we know that Miss Julia Jackson was an older lady, but she had some health issues. What was her health issues that she was dealing with? Can anyone remember? There were 3 things. She was allergic to something she could not eat. What couldn't she eat?
Peanut butter.
Peanut butter. She was allergic to peanut butter.
And she had the beauties.
She had diabetes. And then one more. She couldn't eat peanuts because
bees allergic.
She was allergic to bees. So if Tabby is looking outside the window and she notices, hold on one second. And she notices these flowers outside her window. She says, bees flew from flower to flower. Tammy saw Eva working in the garden. Edgar sat sketching on the ground. The open window added to the room's strangeness. Julia's bedroom windows were always closed, but on today, the window was open. Tammy turned back to the room. The bedside table was bare, meaning it had nothing on the side of the bed on the table. Gone were the details of Julia Jackson's everyday life. A glass of water, insulin injections. Remember, we said when you have diabetes, you have to take a shot of insulin sometimes. A lipstick and mirror. So she had her lipstick and mirror were missing. A box of tissues, and the usual plate of Tori's yummy brownies. All that remained was the lamp. So everything that was on her nightstand is gone. Wondered where Julia's EpiPen was. Remember when if you have children that may have allergies to peanuts, or I know people that are allergic to shellfish, so they can't eat shrimp or crabs. So if they eat or they come in contact with those things, the medicine that they have to take or the injection is in an EpiPen, and they usually stick it in your thigh if something were to happen. The EpiPen had a needle with medication that could save Julia's life during an allergic reaction. So if a bee came in and stung her, the EpiPen had her medicine. And she's saying it was always on her bedside table. But the medicine was not there. Tammy looked under the bed. She opened the closet. She inspected the bathroom. It was the same everywhere, clean and impersonal. Only the portrait of Julia that hung in the wall remained. The portrait was large and set in a gold frame. In it, Julia was seated in a gold chair. She looked about 40 years old. Behind the chair stood a handsome man, Julia's husband, William. Julia's three sons completed the picture: Victor, Oscar, and Timothy. Julia looked happy. Victor came quietly into the room. My father died not long after that was painted. Then my brothers, Oscar and Timothy, both died. He sighed. My mother became angry, disappointed woman. He gazed around. Now that woman is dead, taking her bitterness with her. Her family can breathe freely again. It's been a long wait. For some of us, maybe too long. That night, as Tammy played her ruby red clarinet, she suddenly stopped. Tammy's mind was not on the music. Putting down her clarinet, Tammy went back to the internet. Miss Nosy was curious about allergies. All right, let's see what happens. Chapter 11. The family lawyer arranged a funeral. So the family didn't even put together the funeral. Her lawyer put together the funeral. That's sad. At the reception, Tammy approached Julia's doctor. Excuse me, can you tell me how Mrs. Jackson died? She died of heart failure. What causes heart failure? It's usually caused by heart disease. Did Miss Jackson have heart disease? No, she didn't, the doctor frowned. Can shock cause heart failure? Tammy asked. Insulin shock? Eva was very careful with Julia's injection for diabetes. What about another kind of shock? Tammy persisted. Other kind. The doctor was losing patience. Mrs. Jackson had serious allergies. Yes, she did. But they were under control too. Julia was 85. She just died of old age. The doctor walked away. A few minutes later, he was deep in conversation with Victor. Tammy helped Tori and Ronnie clean up after the reception. Ronnie, did you notice anything odd on the day that Julia died? You mean besides Julia's dead body? That was enough. My screaming brought the entire family. But later, when you cleaned her room, how about then? Like what? Was the window open? So Tammy is asking all of these questions. It's like she is becoming a detective trying to figure out what happened to Mrs. Jackson. I don't think so. Anyway, the windows were always closed to keep the bees out. What about her bedside table? It was knocked over. She must have done it herself. Her body was lying half on the bed and half off of it. Was the plate of brownies knocked over? What about her EpiPen? The brownies were scattered all over. Later, I found the EpiPen under the bed. It must have rolled under there. What's this all about, Tammy? Asked Tori. Julia died of heart failure, right? But she didn't have heart disease. So what made her heart stop? She was healthy and strong. She had diabetes, but Eva was careful about the insulin injections. Yes, Ronnie agreed. What about her allergies? You told me that a teaspoon of peanut butter could kill Julia or a bee sting. Wait a minute, Tammy. There is no peanut butter in this kitchen. I was very, very careful. Tori was annoyed. That window above the climbing roses was never open, added Ronnie. Never. But there was peanut butter in this house. My peanut butter sandwich. I kept one in my backpack. And that window only needed to be opened a crack for a bee to fly in. Anyone could have opened it during the night and closed it in the morning's confusion. Are you trying to tell us something, Tammy? Asked Troy. What if a bee stung Julia? Or there was a tiny amount of peanut butter in the brownies? Julia could have died of shock. Shock? You mean an allergic reaction? Yes. Julia would not be able to breathe. Her blood pressure would drop. I read about it on the internet. Without her EpiPen to stop the reaction, she would die. And her EpiPen was under her bed. The sisters exchanged a look. I'm just saying, it's possible. Definitely possible, insisted Tammy. Tammy's mom said that Tammy's nose was always either in a book or in somebody else's business. That night, Tammy's nose was in both places. She scanned her floor-to-ceiling shelves of books. Maybe one of them would help her solve the mystery of Julia Jackson's death. She found one of her favorite books, Murderers and Their Personalities. One section of the book was underlined. Murderers have a cold-blooded attitude toward others. They believe they deserve whatever they want. They think rules don't apply to them. Disappointment, frustration, anger, greed, or pride simmer below the surface. If they boil over, murder can happen. Tammy closed the book and stared into space. A cold-blooded attitude. Anger, greed, frustration. Those words describe more than one Jackson family member. Was one of them the murderer? Chapter 12. More Miss Nosy. The next day, Tammy found herself in an empty house. The family was meeting with their lawyer. Tori and Ronnie were in town shopping for supplies. Tammy was alone. She went to the top of the house and worked her way down. She started with the adults. In their bedrooms, she opened the desk, read papers, inspected dresser drawers, and peered over the tops of cabinets. So she's looking at the top of the cabinet to kind of see what she finds, if she finds anything that's hidden. She searched the pockets of their clothes. Tammy discovered the secret plans of each adult. Victor had information about how much the company was worth. Olivia had written a letter to the research lab in Costa Rica. Quiet Eva had designed the grounds of the estate. Tammy tackled the twins' room next. Edgar's room was extremely tidy. His paintings lay on a long table. Tammy examined a wasp, a ladybug, and a grasshopper. Each painting showed tiny details. There were notes about each insect. Edgar is a naturalist, thought Tammy. No wonder he wants to go to Costa Rica. So Edgar likes nature. He likes things to be natural just the way they are. Kayla's room was the opposite. Clothes flung everywhere. The walls were plastered with photos of herself. She had an enormous makeup collection and a wig collection. On a long shelf were books of plays and musicals. Romeo and Juliet, The Lion King, West Side Story. Kayla had over 100 plays. Maybe Kayla would end up a star. Who knew? Tammy's next stop was Nick's apartment over the garage. She had been there a few times. She turned over papers and poked around closets. Tammy found drawings for a hotel in a hidden folder. Nick had planned well ahead of Julia's death, too. As she walked down the stairs to the yard below, she heard footsteps. Quickly, Tammy scrambled back up the stairs just as Nick appeared in the apartment's doorway. Tammy? What are you doing here? Nick's eyes scanned the room. Did you want something from my apartment? Oh, I'm sorry to startle you. I need more paper. And I thought you would have some, and you did. Tammy held up a stack of paper. That's okay. I just wish you would ask before dropping it by when I'm not here. Tammy apologized again. She ran down the stairs and across the garden to the house. Whew. She had grabbed the paper just in time. So Tammy got caught in Nick's apartment. She was in there being nosy, looking at all his stuff. At the end of the day, Tammy was ready to go home and think about her discoveries. She was getting onto Ruby when she heard voices in the garden nearby. Victor, someone has been nosing around. My papers have been disturbed. And Eva says her desk drawers were open. Maybe it was Ronnie. She cleans the rooms. I asked her. She and Troy were shopping. The only person in the house was Tammy. Nick discovered Tammy alone in his apartment, said Victor. Maybe Tammy's job here should come to an end, muttered Olivia. So they're talking about firing Tammy. After all, we don't really know anything about her. Hearing the conversation helped Tammy decide what to do. Hopping on her bike, she pedaled down the long driveway. She turned in a different direction instead of heading home. She was seated in the sheriff's office minutes later, so she went to the police. I hear what you're saying, Tammy, but it sounds so far-fetched. Mrs. Jackson was 85. Why shouldn't her heart just give out? Mrs. Jackson was a strong woman, insisted Tammy. She did not have heart disease, but she did have 2 allergies, peanuts and bee stings. That entire family wanted her to die. Maybe someone decided to speed things up. Maybe someone put peanut butter in her food. Tammy, be sensible. You are imagining things. The doctor and the coroner both agree on the cause of death. It's the timing, Sheriff. Mrs. Jackson died immediately after her threat to the family. It's so suspicious. I can't stop thinking about it. Tammy, now I understand why your mom calls you Miss Nosy. Miss Jackson died in her sleep. Please, just get back on your bike and go home. Tammy stomped out of the sheriff's office and slammed the door. She knew something bad had happened in that Jackson house, but no one was listening to her. All right. What do we think? Hold on, I don't want to lose y'all. What do we think is going on? A lot has happened. It's getting juicy. And Tammy got to be careful because they know that she is being nosy. They know that she is snooping around the house. They know all of this. She has to be careful because if somebody killed Mrs. Jackson, they may hurt Tammy if she's not careful. All right. It's getting interesting, ladies. I can't wait to figure out what happened. Do you have an idea of who killed Miss Jackson? Or do you think she died of natural causes? Carla's like, You think somebody killed her? Yeah.
Yes.
Everybody's like, yes. Yeah. It's interesting. I want to read the book to the end, but I'm going to read it with y'all. I'm not going to read. And I'm going to wait. Okay, so what was that? We read 3 chapters. We did chapter 10, chapter 11, and chapter 12. We only have a few chapters left because there are 17 chapters in this book. 17. So we are almost done.